Hello people, I'm the Comic Book Gamer, and today we have Lex Luthor versus the Kingpin in the Battle of Baldness. Now, if you guys have ever watched any of my versus videos prior to this, you know that I like to start them out with the origins. So we'll be starting out with the origin of the Kingpin. Now, as far as Kingpin's origin goes, all we really know is that his first murder was at a very young age, and that he is a self-built criminal. But I have not read a book that's really flat out said his origin and everything that created him and just went all in depth like we have with tons of other characters. He's a very mysterious character. Maybe there is a book that I just have not read, but I have read a lot of Kingpin. I have not seen anything that went really in depth with Kingpin's origin. So basically, he saw all these different things that you need to do to become the Kingpin of crime. He saw what was important to him. He went and he became obsessed with his physique. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's just some big fat guy. Actually, it turns out that's all muscle. Yeah, he weighs 350 pounds or 400 pounds, and that's all muscle. He only has 2% body fat. So yeah, that's why Kingpin, whenever you see him do something, it looks like superhuman strength. It's because he's a huge guy and it's all muscle. It's ridiculous, and that's what he did. We saw in Daredevil Born Again, he is constantly working out. He is obsessed. While you think he's not in that good of shape, he's actually obsessed with his physique, and he is in really good shape. He's just a really big dude, and he's probably the strongest you can get without being superhuman. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else to his origin other than that in Daredevil the Man Without Fear, we saw that he was able to come in at the very end and take over all of crime in New York. That is why he's called the Kingpin. He manages all the crime in New York. He is the Kingpin of crime. So yeah, not a whole lot of in-depth that I can really do with his origin, but he is a very interesting character. For Lex Luthor, there are about 5,000 different origins out there, so I'll be using the ones from Superman Birthright and Superman the Black Ring. Now, I don't know if Superman Birthright has been confirmed canon or not, but either way, it does a nice job of updating the old Silver Age origin for Lex Luthor and bringing it to modern times, and so that's why I'm using that. And the Black Ring really adds more to it. It does contradict itself, well, not Black Ring, but Black Ring and Birthright contradict each other, but Black Ring adds a lot more depth to the origin, and so that's why I'm using both of them. So anyways, in Superman Birthright, Lex Luthor is this kid who lives in Smallville with his dad, and he's not a very sociable kid. No one really gets along with him except for Clark Kent, because Clark Kent's the nice guy, and he wants to be friends with Luthor. Clark is Luthor's only friend, and so one day when Luthor finally has a breakthrough, because prior to this he had a bunch of failed stuff, he has a breakthrough. He found this shard of kryptonite, and Clark goes over there. He's been in this barn, or well, not this barn, but this little lab he made, just experimenting on this piece of kryptonite for a while, for 2 weeks, and hasn't talked to anyone, skipped school and all that. And Clark's like, okay, I'm gonna go over and see Lex, see what's going on with him. So he goes over there, and Lex is like, look at this, I've got a breakthrough, this is awesome. And Clark is like, what's going on? Something's hurting me. Nothing ever hurts me. I don't feel so good. And so Lex really does not like the look on Clark's face. He looks at him, he's like, why are you disgusted? I know that look. Get out of here. You're not proud of what I've done. You're not appreciative of what I'm doing here. This is some great stuff. So just leave. And so Lex decides to go all full rage mode and try to work on this kryptonite. And he breaks into it, taps into it, finds out it's got some intel from Krypton. You see Kryptonian images pop up, and then everything just explodes. Clark gets flung 20 yards, and Lex's dad is just on fire, dying. Lex himself gets caught on fire, and that's how he becomes bald, and because the kryptonite got overloaded and just everything exploded. And so that's when Lex just leaves Smallville. We don't know where he goes. He just runs away. It's assumed he goes to Metropolis, and that's the end of the Birthright origin for Lex Luthor. Now, Superman the Black Ring shows us that as a young man still with hair in Metropolis, Lex Luthor goes and he discovers Darkseid. He's doing this thing with Perry White. Perry White is the editor-in-chief for the Daily Bugle. He's Superman's boss, well, Clark Kent's boss, but at this time he's a younger man as well, still a little bit older than Lex, but Lex is there, and he's working on this thing with Perry, and then he sees this doorway, and he's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. He goes into the doorway, and he's in Apocalypse, and Darkseid's like, you're here. Desaad let you see this doorway. Now see this. And then he just murders a guy straight in front of Lex Luthor. And Darkseid just starts laughing. Darkseid's like, I murdered someone to see how you would react, and you didn't react at all. And Lex is just like, yes, I've seen worse. So he's like, well, welcome to your new home. You're going to be here for a while. And so Lex is there for a little while, and he's working on weapons for Darkseid because that's what Darkseid tells him to do. But turns out Lex thinks he can kill Darkseid. He creates a gun that's able to like tear apart like the fabric of the universe itself, and he shoots it at Darkseid, and he's like, "Ha! I am the new ruler." And then it turns out it didn't work because he's Darkseid, and he's like, "Ah, crap!" So Lex Luthor flees Apocalypse, is able to leave, takes out tons of parademons, and goes back to Earth with some Apocalypse technology, and then we see that Darkseid let him escape, but nevertheless he still did kill some parademons and stuff, but Darkseid did let him escape, and Darkseid's like, that guy will be the ruler of Metropolis one day, and he's gonna be just a big dude. And that just goes to show you that Darkseid saw Lex Luthor as like a worthy human. He doesn't do that with like anyone, nevertheless a human, so that's kind of a big deal. And then later we see that Lex Luthor, as a young man with hair still, trained with Ra's al Ghul. He went to the desert and he was the apprentice of Ra's al Ghul. He did all this stuff for Ra's really liked him, but it turned out Ra's had this box that Lex just wanted to get into. It's this box that like no one but Ra's had seen. He didn't know what was in it. He had to know what was in it. So he went in one day, broke into the box, and it's a box that's not supposed to be like too easy to get into. He got into the box, and then Ra's finds him, kills him, and then puts him in the Lazarus pit. And so he's back to life and just leaves him in the middle of the desert. So Lex escapes somehow and then is able to build his empire. So just like Kingpin, Lex is a very self-made man. He wasn't given his fortune. He made his billions, and that is the origin of Lex Luthor. Now on to equipment and training, starting off with Lex Luthor this time. As far as training and fighting ability go, Lex Luthor is an above average brawler. He's pretty good, but he's nothing amazing. I would say he's on the level or around the level of Oliver Queen prior to Road to Jericho, because in Road to Jericho, that's just a story arc about Oliver Queen going and becoming like amazing. But prior to that, Oliver Queen wasn't that great. He was good, but nothing amazing. I'd say that's the level that Lex Luthor is on. Nothing like fantastic or amazing where he's just like, holy crap, he just took out 500 guys all by himself. He's nothing like that, but he is a good fighter. For his equipment he regularly has on him, he has his war suit, and that's pretty much it. He doesn't always have it on him, but that's his equipment that he regularly uses. Other stuff occasionally, like he'll have something, but nothing that like keeps returning like the war suit. So that's it for Lex Luthor. For Kingpin, he has his cane, and that's kind of it. He doesn't really use anything else, and he's not always using his cane for fighting. But as far as training goes, he's constantly training, whether it's fighting like 10 martial art, black belts at once, or just pumping iron. He's constantly trying to make himself better, and he's a master of sumo. So I would definitely give the edge here to Kingpin. He's a much better fighter than Lex Luthor, and obviously he's like, we've seen stats where it says he's 450 pounds. It's almost all of it is muscle, so that's kind of ridiculous. And I definitely give the edge here to the Kingpin of crime. Now on to feats. What have these two bald villains accomplished in the comics that's so great? The feats of Kingpin are kind of all over the place. For instance, he has fought Captain America and was winning until Falcon came and saved Captain America. But on the flip side of that, he was fighting Spider-Man, got the absolute crap kicked out of him, even though Spider-Man has been outclassed by Captain America multiple times. So that is kind of contradictory. But the old classic Kingpin was a force to be reckoned with, to where the new Kingpin, like the 2000s Kingpin, isn't that much of a physical opponent as he used to be. He can still like destroy groups of ninjas and stuff, but as far as like fighting Spider-Man and Daredevil, he gets beaten up a lot. Not like the classic Kingpin, who was a much more bigger physical threat than he is now. But nevertheless, he still has a lot of feats in all departments, not just physical, such as when he destroyed Daredevil's life. Karen Page, who was Daredevil's secretary, Matt Murdock's secretary, sold Daredevil's secret identity of Matt Murdock to a guy for a fix because she's a junkie. She's addicted to heroin. And Kingpin was able to get a hold of that information and just destroyed Matt Murdock's life. Like, froze all of his accounts, destroyed where he used to live. Like, Matt Murdock's life was terrible. Like, he almost died. It was really, really bad. And that's one of the feats that's just not physical. And he was able to rise to the top and become the crime lord of New York. That's kind of a big deal. New York is a huge city. You know how many other people you have fighting for that? And he was able to rise to the top and beat all of them. Yeah, that's a big feat. And also, as far as physical feats go, he's able to beat the crap out of Punisher until Vernon Brooks came and saved him. And like I was saying earlier, he beat up Captain America until Falcon came and saved him. So fighting the old Kingpin wasn't such a good idea. He beat up a lot of guys. But those are just some of Kingpin's feats. I can't name all of them. Same with Lex Luthor. I'd be here all day naming feats for both of these characters. Now on to Lex Luthor. One of the most impressive feats, in my opinion, for Lex Luthor is the fact that he is one of only 3 beings to ever wield an Orange Lantern ring. It is Lex Luthor, Hal Jordan, and Agent Orange. The only 3 to ever wield an Orange Lantern ring. I'd say that's pretty impressive. He's also outsmarted Brainiac. Yes, Brainiac. He had time because he was mad, so he had plenty of time, because what happened was, prior to their encounter when Lex Luthor came, outsmarted him, and then snapped his neck, Lex Luthor was working with Brainiac to invade New Krypton. New Krypton, I won't get into it. It was basically just the shrunken city of Kandor that was resized to normal size and placed on an empty moon, and Brainiac went to destroy it, and he used Lex Luthor to help him, and Lex Luthor was there, and Brainiac wanted to kill Lex Luthor, so he did, but it turned out it was just a Lex Luthor robot, and so Lex was not too happy about that, because it was like, this guy fully intended to kill me, so he had planning time, went and attacked Brainiac. Brainiac also had planning time, because Brainiac thought that he had outsmarted Lex. He thought he had like these little nanobots inside Lex that were going to destroy him. But nope, turned out Lex had outsmarted him, used his own like nanobots against him, and then snapped his neck. That's kind of a big deal going against a guy who is called Brainiac. Lex was also able to manipulate his way to being president, and while he was there, he had an assault at the White House from Nightwing, Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, Huntress, Tim Drake, Robin, Natasha Iron, Supergirl, and Crypto, the Super Dog. Now, during that assault, he was able to take all of them out. None of them could only a couple made it to the Oval Office, and then he was able to take those out as well, because robots that he had designed were able to stop the other ones. Now, Lex also, in the same story arc, got the crap beaten out of him by Superman, and right after that fight was able to hold his own against Batman, even get some hits on him and stab him in the gut with a huge knife. And although he did get the crap beaten out of him by Batman, like Batman just kicked him straight off a building, he was still able to hold his own against Batman after having been beaten up by Superman. And that's it for the Lex Luthor feats. Now it's time for the actual fights themselves. So I say fights because I have multiple battle scenarios. It's not just they win one and it's over with. No, they have to win multiple ones, win the majority of the fight to be the winner overall. So the first scenario is Lex Luthor versus Kingpin in just a hand-to-hand battle, 1v1. They don't know each other at all. There's no planning. They just don't like each other, and they want to beat each other's bald heads in. So for this fight, I would have to say it goes hands down to Kingpin. I don't see Lex putting up much of a fight. While it's not going to be over in seconds, Lex will definitely lose this first scenario. So scenario 1 goes to the Kingpin. Now for scenario 2, it's still a 1v1 battle between Lex Luthor versus Kingpin. There's no bringing in any outside sources or bringing in their henchmen. It's just Lex Luthor versus Kingpin in a battle, but this time with planning time. Now for this one, I'd have to give it to Lex Luthor, because I don't see anything that Kingpin could do by himself to get past his war suit, because with planning, Lex Luthor would definitely bring in his war suit. And as we've seen in the comics, like in the 70s, without any kryptonite at all, Lex Luthor's war suit was not able to be penetrated by Superman. Superman could not destroy that thing, and that was without kryptonite. There was nothing weakening him. We saw that it was so strong, so I don't see Kingpin being able to do anything to get past it. I could definitely see Lex just beating the living crap out of him with his war suit on. So scenario 2 goes to Lex Luthor. Scenario 3 is something I've never done before, but I see it as being very fitting to these characters, seeing as they work behind the scenes a lot. Now, Scenario 3 is sort of like a real-life chess match, except it's only 3 henchmen versus 3 henchmen. They're all equal to each other, so it's all up to the planning. It's to see who's the better strategist, since both these characters rely on their strategies a lot. As we've seen in the comics, a lot of the times they work behind the scenes, and they just have other people do stuff for them. Now, who would win this one? I see it as Lex Luthor. Why? Because the man has outsmarted Brainiac, and not just Lex had planning time during that. Brainiac had planning time as well, and he was still able to outsmart him and beat him. So whereas Kingpin, we saw that he was undone by Daredevil in Daredevil Reborn. And the reason I specifically bring up that story arc is because Kingpin had the upper hand big time, but then he let his emotions get in the way and he got sloppy. Daredevil himself even said Kingpin was being stupid with what he did. So in the end, I would say Lex Luthor wins overall, because at the end of the day, Lex Luthor is facing one of the most powerful characters in all of comics on a daily basis, to where Kingpin fights Daredevil and Spider-Man. While they are no slouches at all, they are not Superman. And I would say that Lex Luthor wins. But again, this is just all my opinion. This video is all just to tell you guys my opinion on who would win. Please let me know in the comments below. What is your opinion? Who do you think would win? Why? Please do let me know. I want to hear from you guys. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like.